Now that most of the staff's in place and we've got a good feel for what positions need the most help going forward, it's time we start focusing on who's actually playing in the games. Matt Rule's never had the facilities, the name brand, or the fan support that Nebraska gives him, and more importantly, he's never gotten to work with NIL. Last year we saw some big names like O'Shawn Mathis and Casey Thompson choose Nebraska over some big-time programs because of the extra incentives, and this year it'll be no different. 17 recruits came to Lincoln for an official visit over these last 2 days, and although Nebraska won't land all of them, I think it's important we talk about who's at the top of the wish list. So today, I'm ranking my top 10 prospects who came for a visit this week, and we'll talk about how the NIL works at some of these big-time programs. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss any of the breakdowns I drop. And if you want more recruiting updates over these next few weeks, hit the like button now and I'll make sure I keep these coming out through signing day. But now, let's get into it.
Yet across midfield. Touchdown, Nebraska! Omar Manning!
I want to start today with a tweet I was mentioned in yesterday. Keisha asked for the best place to track Nebraska portal activity, and I think a lot of people have that same question. I typically use On3's transfer portal tracker, and that's basically set up as a database with every player around the country who's entered so far. And you can filter it by position, and it shows their high school rating and the updated transfer rating, which is pretty cool, and it gives you a good idea of who the guys are that'll make the biggest impact next season. As of now, only 41 out of almost 1,200 who entered are committed to a new school, and I think they get until February to decide, so there's a ton of opportunity for coaches like Matt Rule who still need to fill some spots. I also pay for Sean Callahan's Husker Online to get the latest info that he's hearing from people around the program, so if you're serious about getting the latest news, since I don't really provide that, I'd definitely become a subscriber there. The next comment I want to address came from Dennis, and he asked for clarification about NIL deals and where all this money's coming from, and the realest answer is that very few have a clear understanding of what's going on since it's basically the Wild West. But I'm going to break down what we do know. The most common form of NIL is individual brand endorsements or deals that allow a player to partner with a company for a paid collab. But those deals only bring in so much money. Open Doors reported that the top guys in the country were only making a couple $100,000, which can't be true since the numbers being talked about for the top 50 names are somewhere between 500,000 and a few million. Last year it was reported that Jordan Addison would get $2 million to transfer from Pitt to USC, but I have no idea how much of that came from boosters and how much came from brand partnerships. He had a paid deal with United that went up on his Instagram, and I saw a couple other posts that could have made him $100,000 at most, which means the rest of that money had to come from paid appearances or events he attended with boosters who were just donating to the pot. And companies like Open Doors only see the brand deals. They don't see how much players are getting paid from these side events that are going on. So if I had to guess where all the big money's coming in, based on what I've heard about Texas and their O-line fund or Ohio State's The Foundation, boosters are just putting money into a pool that gets distributed to players based on what their market rate is to keep them there over losing them to somebody else. And the NCAA is completely removed and basically told players do whatever the hell you want, and that's how we ended up with this free-for-all. But the good news is Nebraska has a ton of booster money, and that's probably the money used to bring in O'Shawn last January, because I can assure you it wasn't a post about a mattress or his Jeep on Instagram that earned him 6 figures. On3 listed 16 players who went to Lincoln for an official visit over these past 2 days, and a few of them are pretty high profile and they could actually start for Rule's team right away. But instead of talking about every one of these guys, since that would take forever and we don't know how likely it is that they'll actually commit, I'm just going to rate the top 10 based on position need and potential in this system. But before I do, I got to shout out our sponsor BroThrow and a former subscriber named Barry who unfortunately decided to unsubscribe because he has an issue with me promoting sports betting. First off, I want to let Barry know there are no hard feelings over here, and I'd welcome you back to the Corn Crazed community anytime because we loved having you. But I do enjoy betting on sports, and a lot of people who watch my videos do as well. So me sharing this website that doesn't charge a vig feels like a moral obligation to me. And I think this is a great time to mention that when you do join our group on BroThrow, you have $100 limits to start, so it actually ensures that you don't get in over your head. And I'm a big believer in gambling responsibly, so if you do sign up to bet on some bowl games, I'd encourage you to play small, because this site allows you to place bets for as low as $1. So again, the direct link to get into our group is brothrow.com/GBR. Now let's get back into these rankings. My rankings are based on position need, player ranking, and my own judgment for who I think would contribute the most. So I'm starting off with number 10, and that's receiver Barry Jackson from Georgia, who's been committed since the summer. But a quick note, he's the lone guy on this list who didn't visit this week since his team's still playing. He's a 3-star top 80 receiver nationally, but he plays for Cedar Grove, who's won multiple state titles, so he knows what it means to win championships. Pitt and Georgia Tech are still trying to flip him since Mickey's out of the picture now, but it sounds like Nebraska's still the top choice, and I even saw a picture of him at his game today wearing the red Adidas gloves. Mickey had an eye for talent, and Barry was one of his top 3 choices for this class. He's a smaller body, but he has a similar skill set as Trey Palmer, so this would be a clutch pickup since this staff needs speed at receiver. At number 9, I've got Brock Knutson from Scottsbluff. Both Rule and Satterfield did an in-home visit last week just to meet him, and the staff ended up getting a confirmation that he is 100% in. He's 6'7", almost 290 pounds, and he ranks as a top 55 tackle in the class. And this staff needs to lock down the top 10 players in the state every year, and more importantly, they need good tackles to start building the O-line back to true form. Benhart, Corcoran, and Prohaska are the best options for tackle now, but they need new blood to come in and push them to get better. Number 8, linebacker Dylan Rogers from Texas, who committed to Barrett Ruud back in July. Losing Hausman was a gut punch, especially since it looks like he's heading to Iowa or Michigan, but Rogers possesses some of those same traits. He's fast and physical, and his play style looks really similar to Luke Reimer. And we saw how quick the defense had to turn to the backups when the front line was hurt halfway through this season, and now that Ativa, Kolarevic, and Hausman are all gone, Rogers could probably compete for playing time right away. And Texas pushed hard for him, and their defense has some NFL talent. So winning the recruiting battle over them says something about what Nebraska can offer. At number 7, I've got Lincoln receiver Benny Nagoy, who just last week was given a committable offer from Matt Rule. And Mickey wasn't 100% sold here, so Benny ended up committing to Iowa State last summer. And I can't remember the last time Nebraska had a receiver taller than 6'3" in the rotation, but we know this staff wants NFL attributes that they can develop, and this is a prime example when you look at his size and his speed. Even if he doesn't end up as a receiver, the priority is to keep the top 10 players in the state home, so flipping the commitment from Iowa State is going to be crucial, but I'd expect it happens any day now. Number 6 is defensive end Cameron Lenhart. He's a 4-star at IMG Academy in Florida, so he's gone against some of the best competition in games and practice all year. And he had originally committed to Mike Dawson and Shenander back in September, but after Shins was let go, he opened his options back up. And I was pretty surprised to see he was still in play since he's got offers to Penn State, Michigan, and Tennessee. But after losing O'Shawn and not knowing Garrett Nelson's future, he could be in the mix for playing time right out the gate. He's the 37th best edge rusher in the class, but I think in Tony White's defense, he has the speed to line up as an outside linebacker too. Sticking with the same position, my number 5 is Elijah Judy, who entered the portal after 2 years at A&M. And On3 has him listed as the 12th best D-end in the portal, but coming out of high school, he was a top 200 player in the country. A&M had a lot of talent, so not getting playing time in the first 2 years is understandable, and I'd expect this staff to get more out of him. Any college experience is valuable, and at the very least, you get a guy who has the size to play right away. And he's projected to commit to Nebraska, but he still has visits to Wisconsin and Boston College, so nothing's confirmed yet. Number 4, Georgia Tech quarterback Jeff Sims. He's 18th at his position in the portal rankings, but I don't think he's getting the credit he deserves. Sims was a 3-year starter at Georgia Tech who had to play under 2 different offensive coordinators, and he still has 2 more years of eligibility. Jeff Collins brought Sims in to run the spread offense in his 2nd year as a head coach, and the transition from triple option to throwing it all the time just didn't go that well in Atlanta. And like Adrian Martinez, Sims was asked to do way too much, and he threw a lot of picks because of it. Both Casey and Logan are done for a few months after shoulder surgeries, so the staff has to bring in at least one QB from the portal. And if you look at the 6'4" height and the 4'4" speed, Sims looks like the type of guy who'd excel as a game manager in a run-heavy offense, but could also thrive in the RPO situation since defenses would have to view him as a legit threat. I like that this wouldn't just be a one-year deal and that he's healthy enough to come in and compete in spring. So we very well could be talking about Nebraska's next QB1, depending on what happens with Casey. Number 3 is Tristan Alvano, the 5-star kicker from Omaha who nailed the game winner for a state championship just a few weeks back. And we've learned how important a reliable kicker is, and although Bleekrod was pretty consistent from close, Nebraska didn't have somebody they could rely on from 50 plus. Alvano's a day 1 starter with proven range, and he has the clutch factor a big-time college kicker has to have playing in meaningful games every week. At number 2, Malachi Coleman. He's obviously a freak athlete, and he can contribute right away on special teams and maybe even on offense, but more importantly, this staff can't afford to play against him. Colorado just did an in-home visit, and Michigan's still on the radar, so Matt Rule's doing everything possible to keep Malachi a part of this class. And he's been a great peer recruiter. He's a positive member of the community who won't have any issues down the road, and above all else, Matt Rule sees the NFL potential in the freak athleticism. And last, the undisputed number 1, first-team all-conference tackle, Ajani Cornelius from the University of Rhode Island. He's the number 2 overall player in the portal and the number 1 offensive lineman. He's been in school 3 years, started the last 2, and has 2 years of eligibility left. Tennessee, Florida, Penn State, Auburn, and a few other big-time programs have all offered, but this weekend, he's only visiting Nebraska and Oregon. And the 2 most important things he's looking for is a coaching staff he likes and fits in with, and a chance to compete for playing time. But I think it's pretty obvious that anywhere he goes, he's going to be a day 1 starter. If Ajani does end up in Lincoln, we'll see Benhart and Prohaska competing for the other spot, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable about the future up front. And On3 says it's a 50-50 between Oregon and Nebraska, at least for right now, so hopefully we get more clarity this week. We still have 10 days left until the early signing day and over a month left for the transfer portal and the second signing day, so I'm sure we'll see some new names come into play while this staff tries to finalize their first roster. I'm not as concerned with this first class because I know the struggles Nebraska's going to face in recruiting with a coach who hasn't had recent enough college success. But the goal's got to be to get enough depth to create competition and to be able to have enough Big Ten caliber players to get through the entire 12-game schedule. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Are you worried about getting a QB, or do you trust who's in the room already despite these injuries? And does Nebraska have a shot at the number 1 tackle in the portal, or are we still living in fantasy land? And is Malachi as important as the media's made him seem, or can Nebraska afford to lose him to Michigan or another big-time program? I'm just hoping for a top 35 class and for a few starters from the portal, but I know we're in for a 3-year build, so I'm going to be patient either way. But that's all I've got for today, so thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Big Red.